Hello everyone and welcome back to our Soap Making for Beginners mini-series. It is day 5, the day that we have all been waiting for, because this is a day that we are actually going to create our first soap. If you are new to our videos, I am Anne and I am one half of the Sussex Handmade Soap Company along with my good friend Wayne. And we have been creating a mini-series of soap making for beginners. We are on day 5, so if you haven't seen days 1 to 4, then go back, go to our playlist and check out those days first, because we are giving you information on a day-by-day basis leading up to actually making your first loaf of soap. And that is where we are today. So we have printed out the recipe that we introduced you to a couple of days ago. We have got this here. And for today's soap, if you are going to follow our recipe, you are going to need, and I will pop this in the description as well, you are going to need 221 grams of water. You are going to need 110.5 grams of lye, so sodium hydroxide. You are going to need 200 grams of coconut oil. You are going to need 40 grams of castor oil. And you are going to need 560 grams of olive oil. Those are the essential ingredients if you want to scent your soap, and we are scenting ours in lavender. If you also want to scent yours in a lavender essential oil, you will need 24 grams of lavender essential oil. If you want to choose a different scent, then we are going for 24 grams, which is 3%. But just make sure if you are using a different scent or a different essential oil, check the safe usage rate of that oil in soap. We are working at 3%. Not all essential oils can be used at 3%. So if you are changing the scent, check first that it is safe for use in soap at the given percentage. And if you want to decorate the top, you're just going to need a few grams, like 3, 4, 5 grams of lavender flowers, or if you want to use a different flower, you can reuse rose petals or calendula petals, dried flowers. We don't want fresh ones, dried ones, and that is only, I say, if you want to decorate the top. You can leave it plain and the soap will still work out absolutely fine. So that is the recipe we're going to be working from. And so to begin, we are going to clean down all our surfaces. We are going to get our safety equipment on, our goggles, long sleeves, gloves and closed-toe shoes, and we are going to begin. So if there's anything you need to recap on, now's the time to do it. Pause this video, go back to one of our other ones and check anything you need to check. But if you are all ready to go, then so are we. So let's start making that first loaf of soap. So now we are ready to start preparing our ingredients. And I have cleaned down all my surfaces. I have popped on my gloves and my goggles and my long sleeves. And I have collected all of the ingredients in the recipe and got them all out and ready. So I've got my base oils, I have got my essential oil, and I've got my lavender flowers, which we're going to be using to top the soap. These are optional. The essential oil and the lavender flowers are both optional. You don't have to use them if you don't want to. The only ingredients I haven't got out on the table are the lye and the water. I have got them over by my sink because that is where we are going to be creating the lye water. I have also got all of my utensils just over to one side as well. I have got my jugs, my saucepan, my mould, my spoons and my scales all out as well. So everything we are going to need to create this soap is now out, and it has all been collected, so there's going to be no rushing around at short notice trying to find something that we remember we haven't got out, because we don't like rushing when we are making soap. I've also got my recipe down here in front of me just for reference. So now we want to begin by weighing out our base oils. So we're going to begin today by weighing out our castor oil, and our recipe calls for 40 grams of castor oil. So we're just going to carefully weigh this out into our jug. And now that we have got 40 grams of castor oil, we are going to reset the scales and we are going to weigh out our olive oil. And we want 560 grams of olive oil for today's recipe. I am weighing it into the same jug as my castor oil, but if you are not confident with being able to get the correct amount in the jug and perhaps going over, You can weigh them into separate jugs if you want to, just to make sure that you have got your measurements exact, and you can then combine them together after they have been weighed out. So now we've got our olive oil and our castor oil combined together. We are now going to weigh out our only solid oil in this recipe, and that is our coconut oil. And our recipe calls for 200 grams of coconut oil, and I'm going to be weighing that directly into our saucepan because we are going to be melting down the coconut oil in a little while. And I think it just saves on washing up, weighing directly into the saucepan. If you didn't want to, you could weigh it into another bowl if you wanted to. We are at 201 grams, so we're just going to take out the tiniest amount. 200.5. I mean, realistically, the extra 0.5 of a gram isn't going to make the world of difference, but I'm quite particular and I like my things exact. There we go, 200 grams of coconut oil weighed out. And that is all of our base oils for the recipe weighed out now. So now that we've weighed our base oils, we are going to weigh our lavender essential oil, and this is what we are using to scent the soap with today. It is optional, you can leave the soap unscented if you want to, and if you don't like lavender, you can switch it out for another scent or for a fragrance oil. We are using 24 grams of lavender essential oil today, and I'm actually using a chopstick to help me pour because I find it really easy to just pour down a chopstick, and that avoids drips and it avoids the essential oil running down the side of the bottle. So I pop the chopstick against the lip of the bottle and I just carefully pour, and the essential oil then just runs straight down the chopstick, and I can pour nice and slowly and carefully until I have got 24 grams. So now we have exactly 24 grams of lavender essential oil to use in our soap. So we can pop this to one side, and now we can weigh our lavender flowers. So we're going to be using 5 grams of these little beauties today. I am just going to shake them down into the ramekin dish. And because we are not selling this soap, so we don't have to be completely exact with ingredients that don't matter too much, if this goes slightly over or slightly under 5, I'm not going to worry too much about it. There we go, 5.2. That will be perfect. So we're going to pop these to one side now as well. And now it is time to actually prepare your lye water. So for our lye today, we need 110.5 grams of lye to be carefully weighed out. And make sure you are wearing your goggles, your gloves and your long sleeves for this step. And we carefully weigh out 110.5 grams of lye. And there we have 110 grams of lye that I'm going to pop to one side now, and then we're going to weigh out our water. And we need 221 grams of water, and this is cold water. It's not ice cold, it is just cold water. As mentioned in our lye video, you should always use cold or cool water when preparing your lye solution, never warm or hot water. There we go, so we have now weighed out our water as well, and what we are going to do now is prepare our lye solution. And we actually showed you how to prepare a lye solution in video number 2, which I shall link somewhere on the screen. If you haven't yet watched our video number 2 on lye safety and preparing a lye solution, then go ahead and watch that now, because towards the end of the video we do show you how to actually prepare your lye, and that is what you're going to need to follow now to actually prepare your lye solution. So go and have a watch of that video if you haven't learned it already and you're not sure what you're doing, and then I want you guys to prepare your lye solution in line with how we do it in the video I have linked. So hopefully you should now have your lye mixture somewhere safe cooling down. And while your lye is coming down to temperature, we can prepare our oils. So we have got our coconut oil in the saucepan, and we are now just going to turn our oven to a low heat. I say oven, I mean hob. I always call the hob the oven, but I know what I mean. So yeah, turn the hob to a low heat, and we are just going to melt our coconut oil. Some people do this in the microwave. We don't, because one, we don't actually own a microwave, and two, it is really just as easy to do it on the hob. So over a low heat, we are melting the coconut oil, and even though I've got the hob on the lowest setting and it's only been a few seconds, you can already see that it is starting to melt. And that is because coconut oil does have a melting point of 76 degrees Fahrenheit, so it doesn't have to get very much warmer at all for this to actually start melting. And indeed, over summer when it is hot and we have deliveries of coconut oil, they do sometimes turn up in a liquid state because the outside temperature has just got too warm for it to stay solid. So we are just going to watch our coconut oil dissolve now. So now we have melted the coconut oil and removed it from the heat, and we are now going to add in the castor oil and the olive oil that we prepared and weighed earlier. So just carefully tipping in the castor oil and the olive oil and combining them with the melted coconut oil. So now we have combined the oils all together, we are going to check our temperature, and we are at 99 degrees Fahrenheit, which for us is a little on the low side. We want to soak at 115 degrees Fahrenheit today. So when the lye is nearly ready, we will pop this just back on the heat just for a little while, just to raise up the temperature. And if I press the button here, you can see that that is 36.3 C. So when your lye and oils have reached the correct temperature, you want to bring them back to your work surface where you're going to mix them up and turn them into soap batter. Our lye is at 112 degrees Fahrenheit, which is fine. That is 44 centigrade. And our oils over here are at 113 Fahrenheit, so just a degree or so warmer, 45 C. So now what you need to do is carefully add your lye water into your oils, and you want to pour very carefully. You can sieve your lye water if you want to. That does ensure that any undissolved lye does get caught. We don't tend to. We just carefully pour from the jug down into the oils. And this is where you now need your stick blender that we mentioned in the equipment section of our videos. And you need to carefully, holding the pan handle with one hand, lower the blender into the oils and lye. Make sure it's firmly placed on the base of the pan, and then you are going to be doing a mix of whisking and pulsing with the blender. And we are going to show you this in real time, but I will probably mute it because you don't want the sound of the blender going constantly in the background. But this will be real time. Normally we cut it because it's not the most interesting thing to see. But for a beginner's video, we want to show you roughly how long it's going to take you to get to a medium trace, which is what we are going to be soaping at today, because it's a good trace to attempt to go for if you are a beginner. So, real time, bringing the soap to trace. Stirring and pulsing. now at a light to medium trace, which you can see by the fact that when I drip it down off the blender, it is running down slowly and just kind of settling into the batter. So now we are going to add in our essential oils, and you can add yours in too if you're choosing to use them. We've got the lavender that we weighed earlier. So what you want to do now, if you are using your essential oils, just carefully tip them into your soap batter and then use your spatula to just work them into your soap batter. Work them in really nicely, give them a good old stir in. You can actually use a stick blender to blend them in, but we find that sometimes it's easier to control the trace when you are using a spatula rather than a blender. So just give them a good old spatula in, and then we are ready to actually pour our first soap into the mould. So let's bring in the mould. So now you just want to carefully pour your soap batter into your mould. Scraping down that pan to make sure you get all of the batter out. And then to ensure that you don't end up with any air bubbles in your soap, you want to give it a little shake from side to side and a tap down. And tapping down and the shaking both help any air bubbles that are trapped in the batter to work their way up to the surface. So I do like to give it a nice firm tap. And then if you want to, you can use a spatula just to kind of even out the top or put a pretty little pattern should you so desire. We just go with a very basic flat top for our lavender soap, and then you can decorate the top, and this is where the lavender buds have come in. And as I said, you do not have to decorate the top of your soap. Some people do not like lavender buds. They say they turn brown and look like little mouse droppings. We did experience that problem to begin with, but actually since ordering these super vibrant bright lavender buds, we find they don't actually tend to fade to brown nearly as badly as all other lavender that we have tried. So I shall, if I can remember where we got them, link to where we got them, and then you can just sprinkle on the flowers however you want to. Any kind of pattern, you could just do them down the centre, or you could do as we are doing and cover the entire loaf. I like a good old sprinkling of lavender over the top, and obviously some of this will come off as we cut anyway. So there we go, a proper hefty sprinkle of lavender from me there. And now we want to try and ensure that this soap goes through gel phase. So we are going to place it into a cardboard box, which I am just going to grab to show you. So today we would like our soap to go through gel phase if possible. So we are going to place it inside a cardboard box, and you can use a shoe box if you've got one to hand. They are generally pretty useful, or just a packaging box of some description. So we've got a little house for our soap now. We are going to close it up, and what you want to do then is to cover it with a towel. You obviously need to put it somewhere where you can leave it undisturbed for 24 hours, but insulate it with an old towel. And now you want to leave this for 24 hours for it to firm up. Peek at it every so often just to check it isn't getting too hot and starting to crack. If you do notice a crack forming down the top of your soap, then it is getting too hot. So you need to actually remove the towel and move the soap to a cooler place. But it should be okay like this. So we're going to leave this one for 24 hours now. So go and pop your soap to bed, and then join us back here tomorrow, and we shall uncover our soaps and chop them up, and you will have made your very first loaf of soap. Yay! So after 24 to 48 hours, your soap loaf is going to be ready for unmoulding and cutting. So we are going to take the towel off our box now. We are going to open the box up and we are going to remove the soap from the inside. And I'm just going to show you now how we unmould from these silicone loaf moulds, because they can be a little bit tricky. We are not wearing gloves now. We have waited 48 hours to unmould this soap, and the majority of the lye will now have saponified, so we are okay to not have our gloves on. Apologies for the slight pink tint to my fingernails there. I was experimenting with bath bombs and managed to dye my nails, so we'll just ignore that. So I begin by just gently prising each edge of the mould away from the soap. And if at this stage you notice it's sticking, or it is not coming away cleanly, or it is just really hard to pull away, then that means it is a little early for unmoulding. So you want to pop your soap back to the side and just stop. If you keep trying to unmould when it's sticking and it's not coming away, it's likely to kind of damage the edges of your soap. So it should come away relatively easily and relatively cleanly. And then what I do is I lift up the soap, and you can see the underneath here, and there we go, we are losing a lot of lavender from the top, as I said we would. But I tend to press up using my fingernails, using the tips of my fingers. I press up from underneath, just gently, until I feel the soap starting to release like that. Then I turn it around. I repeat the process on the other side, so pressing quite firmly from underneath until I feel the soap release, as it has done there. Then I turn the soap over and I pull these two edges of the mould here outwards, and as I do that I gently press in the centre, and the soap kind of just falls out by itself, and there we have one unmoulded soap loaf. So this is a point where if you are a new soaper, you will want to bring your chopping board in, because I'm going to presume that you don't have an actual soap cutter. If you have a soap cutter, then obviously you would use that. So we've got our chopping board, and now we need our soap loaf. So, one soap loaf, and because this one has got botanical items on the top, we are going to cut it upside down. The reason for cutting upside down is that the little lavender buds, if we were to cut the right way up, would get dragged through the soap and could leave drag marks on the inside, which, you know, completely harmless, but just don't look so nice. So because we have botanicals, we are cutting upside down. If this was the top of our soap and there was no decoration, we'd be fine to cut, you know, the right way up. And if you wanted to, you could now just eyeball it and cut it as you see fit, but we are quite precise, so we like to use a ruler to measure our soap out. So I take a knife, and we like to have our soap at 1 inch thick. Obviously it is personal preference. If you want yours a little bit thicker or a little bit thinner, you can adjust to where you want your own thickness to be. So we go for about 1 inch in thickness. And I just go along the ruler, just lightly marking where I want to cut it. And I am not the best at cutting in straight lines. Wayne is much better at cutting in straight lines than I am. So I'm going to do my best for you today. But we take our knife now, and all you need to do with your knife, nice and straight, just apply pressure down through your soap and then pulling away, and there we have cut 1 bar of soap, which we shall pop to the side as we cut up the rest of them. I do tend to clean my knife with a clean but old tea towel between cutting. I just think it gives a cleaner cut on the soap, a cleaner finish. So I clean between cutting and then just repeat the process. So here we have one chopped loaf of lavender soap, and as I said, I am not the best at cutting evenly. I am very glad we have got a soap cutter now to take the stress out of cutting, because these two especially are rather different sizes. But hopefully your loaf has come out fairly well and taken on a similar look to this one. And now we just want to touch on a couple of aspects of how to actually look after these, so that when you do use them for the first time, you are going to have the best bar of soap that you can possibly have to use. So there we go, our first beginner's soap is made and cut. But don't be too hasty, don't be rushing to use it just yet, because you need to cure your soaps before use. And by that I mean you need to place them on a shelf, out of the way, somewhere that has got good ventilation, good airflow, and you need to just space them out, kind of like this actually, give them a little bit of space between them so there is room for the air to circulate. And you need to leave them there for 4 weeks minimum, 4 to 6 weeks. 6 weeks is better, it's going to give you a harder, firmer bar of soap, and only then will you be able to actually use them. I mean, after 72 hours, they are saponified. There is only a perhaps trace amount of lye left to saponify over the following days. After 72 hours, they are technically fine to use. However, if you try and use one of these bars after 3 or 4 days, you're going to wash your hands with it. It's not going to be as mild and gentle, and it is not going to last very long at all. It is likely going to turn into mush, and it's going to be gone in, 2 or 3 uses. So curing allows the crystalline structure of the soap to form, and it allows excess water to evaporate, and it allows your bars to firm up and turn into really nice hard bars of soap that are going to last you a lot longer in the shower. So hold off on using your soap for now, pop it on a shelf, forget about it, come back to it in 4 weeks, and then, and only then, can you enjoy the fruits of your labour. I hope you found today's video useful. It's obviously the video we have been building up to all week, the soap making. Tomorrow we are showing you how to do a 2-layered soap in different colours, and then the day after that we are doing a swirled design. So come back for them. If you're enjoying our videos, give us a like or give us a subscribe. Put a comment, let us know how you're getting on, let us know if you have made your first soap yet, and if you have, how it's turned out. And we shall see you tomorrow for video number 6 in our mini-series, making a layered soap. Bye!